Welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive into Bloomberg L.P., specifically looking at about 30 years of corporate conduct. And we're examining this tension between the founder's really famous origin story and, well, the company's history with litigation and internal controls.
Right. The story everyone knows is Michael Bloomberg getting fired from Salomon Brothers back in '81. The classic tale of being pushed out, forced into entrepreneurship.
Exactly. But there's a key detail often glossed over, isn't there?
There is. That firing, it wasn't some catastrophic event leaving him penniless. He walked away with a $10 million severance payment. Huge money then. Still huge now.
$10 million. Oh, so when he talks about taking this massive risk.
Well, yeah. The sources we looked at frame it quite differently. Less of a catastrophic failure, more like a mandatory, fully funded mandate for innovation. That capital essentially bought down the personal risk massively.
A fully funded mandate. That's a fascinating way to put it. It really lowers the stakes, personally speaking. So he was, in a way, rewarded with capital right from the start for persistence, for risk-taking.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It means the company's origin story isn't about desperation. It's about starting with a founder who was already financially insulated. It's just not your typical garage startup narrative.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. If the founder's own setback was cushioned by a pile of cash, how does that compare to, say, an ordinary employee there now, trying to raise concerns or seek accountability?
Well, that's where you see this stark contrast, this dichotomy. We have accounts, even recent ones from 2024, suggesting employees reported harassment and then faced. Well, the litigation claims allege significant institutional resistance.
Resistance, like psychological pressure.
Yes. Reports mention psychological abuse following a harassment report. And this is where we need to look at whether it's just bad management or something more structural.
Okay, is it structural? Because the sources do detail a pretty extensive corporate infrastructure for internal control.
That's the crucial point. Bloomberg L.P. explicitly states it uses internal surveillance. We're talking CCTV cameras, employee badge access logs, computer usage data, and this data is accessible to security, HR, and legal for investigations.
Accessible for investigations. So it's not just about building security.
Not entirely. The argument is that this infrastructure creates a structural capability for psychological duress. It's not just theoretical. It could be actively used.
So the system itself could be kind of weaponized against an employee raising issues?
That's the allegation. That retaliation can move beyond just interpersonal issues. It allegedly involves using that compliance and security data, that digital trail perhaps retrospectively, to isolate, monitor, or even find minor policy violations to justify action against the employee who reported something. Security protocols become pressure points.
Wow. Okay, so if the system allows for that level of internal control, what are the external costs? Let's look at the financials, the liabilities. That's where it gets really interesting.
Absolutely. Because the public record shows over $60 million in known wage settlements and regulatory fines. And one figure really stands out. A single private lawsuit settlement for $54.5 million for systemic wage and hour violations.
$54.5 million in one case.
Correct. That kind of number suggests pretty strongly a structural issue, perhaps a tendency to minimize employee-related costs across the board.
And these are just the public settlements and fines, right? What does that imply about disputes settled privately, maybe with NDAs?
Exactly. If you apply standard industry benchmarks, that level of public litigation usually points to a much larger volume of disputes handled confidentially. Our projection, based on those benchmarks, suggests Bloomberg L.P. has likely used non-disclosure agreements to settle a minimum of, say, 75 to 150 significant employment disputes over the last 3 decades.
75 to 150 significant ones involving things like harassment or discrimination.
That's the projection, yes. Harassment, discrimination, retaliation. It indicates a potentially large amount of liability being managed, contained through mandated confidentiality.
So managing the crisis rather than focusing solely on prevention.
And it's not just historical. You see ongoing litigation, like the large Induga class action lawsuit. That case continues to include claims of systemic sex discrimination and retaliation, allegedly directed from quite high up within management.
Okay, so bringing this all together, what's the big picture here? It sounds like the organization might be structured to handle these high-stakes employment disputes less through prevention and more through, well, aggressive legal tactics and financial containment, using cash and NDAs.
Right. Which brings us to a final sort of provocative thought for you, the listener. Consider the fundamental contradiction here. You have a corporation whose entire business is built on providing meticulous financial data, integrity, transparency to its clients.
The core product is transparency.
Precisely. Yet internally, this same company accrues over $85 million in known public fines and settlements related to failures in data integrity and systemic labor compliance. It really raises questions about the internal culture. Does it prioritize asset security and client data integrity above potentially comprehensive personnel protection, treating the latter more like a quantifiable liability to be managed?